don't see how that can possibly be known. But it's clearly the case that all the violence in Iraq is the result of the attempt by the jihadists to become the successor regime to the Ba'ath Party, with which they've been collaborating now for many years.
Well, all of the violence, certainly some of it would be resisting an invasion.
They didn't give Iraq one day's break after the fall of the dictator. They didn't give one day's respite to the people to have, after 35 years of war and fascism, just a little time to think, to start publishing a few newspapers, to allow people to get their satellite dishes, which would have been illegal before, tuned in a bit, have a bit of a discussion, maybe talk about an election. No, straight to criminal violence and sabotage, immediately, without pity.
To which our defense secretary said stuff happens.
All the deaths in Iraq are attributable to that, to the organized, prearranged, actually, collusion between the Ba'ath Party remnant and the jihadists and the foreign fighters who they'd been importing for some years before, who you're quite right to say we underestimated.
Mm-hmm. Christopher Hitchens.
But where have we not underestimated the sheer venomousness of the parties of God? We've underestimated it consistently. It's something I'd like to see put a stop to. And a military victory over those forces in a keystone country would be a wonderful thing to see, and I think we have every chance of beating al-Qaeda in Iraq. Not just beating it, but humiliating it. I think that's a very, very important objective.
And why do you say that? Because it looks like the United States is bogged down in a no-win situation right now.
It doesn't look like that to me at all. Neither on my visits there nor email correspondence that I get practically every day from soldiers in particularly Anbar province, which is turning out to be the hinge place, where it's quite evident that the local Sunni population has turned on al-Qaeda, asked for help in getting rid of it, and which means that not only can we defeat these appalling people, but we can discredit them in front of a Muslim people. Now, that seems to me to be an extraordinarily important war to be fighting.
But isn't it quite possible that we're discrediting ourselves in front of the Muslim people? I mean, that seems to be
not if it turns that way. No, not if the Sunni minority, which is the one that has the least to gain from the liberation of Iraq, is coming to the Americans and saying, we need your help to get these bin Ladenists out of our hair. That's an achievement, it seems to me. Well, the evidence also of the surge in Baghdad is so far very encouraging. In the northern provinces, we have a very thriving democratic enclave among the Kurds, which is an example to the whole region. We can continue to hold up this example to the rest of Iraq, say, look, you could, if you liked, keep on fighting till everything looks like Beirut. Or you could have a federal solution, solving your differences by election, and drinking from an enormous lake of oil, which we're expanding the size of by making new discoveries. We'll keep on giving you the alternative. But there is the other road of jihadism, nihilism, and implosion. And that's the threat throughout the whole region. We have to take it on somewhere. And I think Iraq turns out to be the place where the confrontations occur.
And it seems, are you prepared, or are you suggesting that the Bush administration should take it on in Iran as well?
Well, it's clear to me that the Iranian mullahs think that they can profit from a confrontation with the United States. I don't know what gives them this idea. But it's clear they're looking for one. They're looking for one in Lebanon, where they're trying to destroy Lebanese democracy with their Syrian proxy. Excuse me. They're looking for one in Palestine, where they're trying to do to the Palestinians what they've done in Lebanon, Hezbollah proxy there. And by making an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians impossible. They're trying to do so by breaking every agreement they've ever even talked about signing on the question of nuclear weapons. And they've looking for a confrontation by sending death squads to countries as far away as Argentina and London to kill people who they don't like the look of. I hope very much that their nuclear resources, their nuclear, what am I talking about? Not resources. Their nuclear facilities are demolished before they can produce a weapon. And if that has a ripple effect or can be hope to generate one that would demolish the theocracy as well, I would applaud at the top of my lungs.
And my view is that if Bush goes ahead and bombs Iran, that he's going to compound the problems the United States has throughout the Muslim world, because people are going to say, look, it's another Muslim country the United States is attacking.
Well, another theocracy with which we've had a confrontation. That would be nothing compared to having apocalyptic weapons in the hands of a messianic regime. With that, we cannot possibly coexist. Although there is no coexistence with that.
Well, Anthony Zinni, who was head of the Central Command, said we can deter them just as we deterred, Khrushchev and Stalin.
Well, that shows what a fool's in he is and always has been. That's precisely the difference, that we're not dealing with rational people here. We're dealing with people who think the 12th Imam is on his way back.
But even if Iran gets one weapon,
and people who have talked,
that would be just national suicide, though, and they must know that.
Yes, but the suicide is the highest form of honor for people like this. As you know, it's their muse. It's what they dream of. They openly say, where they prefer death to life. They say that's why we're weak, because we don't see the gorgeousness of death. And well, I don't think a regime that thinks like that should be in possession of apocalyptic weaponry. I think it's irresponsible to allow any doubt to be expressed on this score.
But then the kind of international system that you are positing, Christopher Hitchens, is one where basically the United States can go essentially attack almost any country that it has a huge disagreement with if that country is wanting to get a nuclear weapon and has a bad human rights record.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
So that's just one.
I mean, it's your phrasing of it. My phrasing would be different, but you haven't said anything I disagree with.
My guest today is Christopher Hitchens. I'm Matt Rothschild, the editor of the Progressive Magazine. You're listening to Progressive Radio. I wanted to get your evaluation of the Bush, of the president, George Bush, especially, and maybe this can be a hinge into your new book, God is Not Great, his invocation of God rather frequently. I mean, he has said in the Iraq context that we're delivering the gift of freedom there, but it's not our gift to deliver. It's the gift of God Almighty. So he makes himself out to be God's little UPS man or FedEx delivery boy. And doesn't that concern you?
Well, the president's rhetoric on religion, of course, gives me piles, hemorrhoids, as does all such rhetoric. I mean, the ghastly things said by John Edwards and Barack Obama particularly, and Hillary Clinton, have exactly the same effect on me. I think Bush is probably less pious than they are. I remember feeling such a wave of revulsion at the sermon given by Billy Graham after September 11th, 2001 at the National Cathedral, for example, with the entire political class clustered to hear this goon and demagogue and Jew-baiter and fanatic talking about how those who'd been murdered in New York had gone to paradise. I mean, it's nauseating, all this stuff.
I mean, the idea that Bush says he's
however,
he's carrying out God's will. I mean, he did tell
I think it's quite clear that he does not say that he's on a mission from God or God tells him what to do.
Well, that's not true.
He's a fatalistic Methodist. He says things like, you get to the point where you can do no more and it's all in God's hands. He would have made a very good Muslim. And of course, if he'd been born in a Muslim country, that's exactly what he would be.
There's the story out of Haaretz, though, that at the time previously where he was trying to fleetingly engage with Palestinians, that he told Palestinian negotiators that God told me to go to war against Afghanistan and God told me to go to war against Saddam Hussein.
Yeah, I
don't
find that story very convincing. I've read it. It doesn't sound like him. He's much more... It's much more like this. He says, Jesus got me off the drink. Okay. He says... when I looked into Vladimir Putin's eyes and saw he was wearing his grandmother's crucifix, I realized, this was a good man, a person of faith. He says we should teach the argument about evolution by natural selection versus creation. Actually, there isn't an argument, as you know. This kind of soft-centered stuff. No, there's no sign at all that he considers himself to be evangelizing for God in his foreign policy.
I disagree with that, but that's just as well. Tell me about the book and why you wanted to write God is Not Great, How Religion Poisons Everything.
Well, I thought that there was some sign of a change in the zeitgeist, especially in the United States, a willingness to resist religious and clerical bullying and to call it by its right name around the world and at home. And so I thought, well, up till now, most of the people taking up this challenge have been great teachers in the natural and human sciences, like Professor Dawkins and Professor Dennett and others, where I'm not qualified, but I might be able to make a more general lay argument on why it is that religion is bad for you.
And some of your points, are quite blunt, like religion is child abuse. Do you want to articulate that?
Well, yes, it's child abuse in several ways. One is, of course, its obsession with mutilating the genitalia of the newborn, which I have a special